is Shelly Brown. I am an actress, and let's go down the panel and introduce ourselves. Introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Kenny Baldwin. I teach comedy writing at BYU. I'm also a copyright attorney. I was involved with a lot of sketch comedy stuff in the area for several years now, and so it's kind of I would consider myself, I guess, kind of a wannabe, but I've been a wannabe for a long time.
Eventually you gotta reach it, right?
That's right.
So my name is Kohl Glass. I'm an independent filmmaker, director. For this panel, I'm a director. I also write. And I have acted. I acted in my first movie this summer when it was a really weird situation where somebody asked me if I would want to go to the DR Congo to do some workshops.
You're like, uh-huh.
And they were like, great. And then I said, of course I want to go. And then they go, well, we also are shooting a movie. Can you play an American role? And I had never met these people. This was email only. So I'm like, who offers a role over email unless it's like a waiter, right? I got a waiter. I can do waiter. I had been taking acting classes because I've been trying to learn, So I was like, I've never acted before, but I think I got this. And then I had 5 scenes. I was the B story character.
Wow.
Wow.
I think luckily I've been cut completely out of the movie, but so I had my first acting experience, but I've really been trying for the last I think 2 years I've been trying to be a student of acting so I could direct actors better, so I could learn how to communicate with them, because that was something I realized I was not doing well as a director.
Excellent. I don't have a funny story about the DR. But we're here to talk method acting. So I'm supposed to just moderate, so I'm gonna keep handing it off. I'll start it and hand it off. Method acting, what is it? Do you want to talk techniques or theory or how it works? What is method acting?
Sure. Method acting, I believe, actually comes from Russia.
Mm-hmm.
What's the guy's name? Stanislavski, right? Okay. And he presented this theory for actors to kind of assimilate some parts of the roles they were playing in order to better connect emotionally. Then this practice kind of came to the United States. The Actors Studio picked it up in New York, and they really started experimenting with method acting. And since then, I think it's kind of morphed and shaped into the joke that it's become today. Well, not a joke for some people, but I think a lot of times the phrase method acting, if we were to map it on a chart in the times that it's used, it's the brunt of a joke.
There's some humor there. Yeah.
I don't know if you want to add anything.
I'll just add this. I've never worked with someone. Method acting, as we know it in our popular culture, is basically an actor who doesn't break character during the whole shoot, like Jim Carrey being Andy Kaufman or Jared Leto being the Joker, and they'd be basically treated like, I don't know if that's truly what method acting is.
That's fair.
But it feels like that's what we're like, basically the joke is method acting is something that actors will take way too far. I've never worked with an actor who didn't break character between takes or whatever, or asked to be called, So I've never seen the benefits, but I feel like it would be hard to work with someone like that, unless you're working with somebody like Jim Carrey, who, you know what I'm saying, like, if they're really knocking it out of the park, sure. I think my overall opinion on acting methods is to use the one that works for you. And if method acting is working for you, then use that. But there are quite a few other methods of acting, and I know that there's one that I've adopted for myself that I kind of direct in, but I try to always be very sensitive to the actors and their process, because I just need them to deliver, and however they're going to deliver is not my business, right? I don't want to be like, you're. And we talked about this, those of you who were at my directing actors panel last night, we talked about results directing and versus process directing. Well, I think there's results acting versus process acting.
Yeah.
I'm done.
Actually, really
No,
quick,
please.
when I was younger, I did a production of Les Mis, and the Jean Valjean that we had was a method actor for live stage, which, is, there's a lot of backstage time,
Yeah.
The kid who played Marius at the time was like the opposite. He was the guy with the angel voice who he had done nothing to deserve, right? And we all hated him for it. And he was just a total jerk. Well, not a jerk, like that lovable jerk, right? So one time I walked into the backstage and there's this huge row of mirrors and there's these light bulbs. And it was probably 2 hours before curtain. And our Jean Valjean was sitting there staring himself in the mirror, starting this process of becoming Jean Valjean.
Yeah.
And Marius enters the room and starts throwing peanuts at him, right? And I cannot explain the feelings inside of me when that happened, but it was, and eventually, it kind of broke the trance, and there was this awkward kind of sorry and like I'm trying to work here kind of moment, and it's just like, to me that is a really great symbol, and it always has been since, of what the method acting process is really like. You have one person who takes it very seriously, everyone around them who maybe doesn't, and then finally they just kind of go with it. So the rest of the performance, he would always just kind of trump around. It's like a character like Jean Valjean too is like a pretty grumpy character, and so he'd just be like, and we'd be like, bonjour Valjean, and he'd be just like, and he's like, keep walking. So anyway.
Okay, I feel like I should pipe in as a method actor.
Yeah.
Nice.
The truth is that full, solid method acting comes in so many flavors. You've got your basic Stanislavski, and then you've got your Meisner, method, and your Stella Adler method, and you've got Lee Strasberg, and you've got all these different methods that you can pull in. So the technique of method acting can come in so many different ways. Staying in character through your breaks, which I would argue in theater is not nearly as bad as in film, because in film you're filming, there's so much time, just to film little pieces. At least in theater, you're there and everything's happening in the moment right there.
Well, you do the same thing so many times over and over, right, with film. So it's like,
Yeah.
I just did this.
Yeah.
Right.
Jean Valjean's in makeup now.
He's singing the song
and yet
for the
people
10th
do.
time.
People will do exactly what Kohl was saying, where they'll just stay in character through the whole time. These are usually reserved for very complicated characters, where they're like, I can't get in this headspace quickly. Does that make sense? Most acting, we can get in that headspace pretty quickly. And the techniques that are learned in method acting, the recall, memory recall things, where you have to go, okay, I've got to be angry, and then you pull out a memory recall of a moment where you were livid, and then you're like, okay, I'm there, because we all have that ability. I mean, I think that's, and imagination. Sometimes you have no livid moment in your memory, so you have to say, if somebody did this to my kid, I would be livid. You got to pull out those as-ifs, and put that right in there.
I actually have a question.
Yeah, here, you can ask your question.
So I've taken acting classes from different, not professors, coaches.
Yeah, sure.
And the first one I did was very much like tapping into your emotional,
your memory,
and pulling it out.
That's
so
method.
I mean, and that's kind of like, again, the joke. Like the man who knew too little, he's like, my dog is dead, right? And he's like, is that what you do? And like he's poking himself trying to remember that his dog's dead. And then the other classes that I have found, well, I mean, so the coach was Ben Hopkins. You guys know Ben?
Yeah.
You know Ben. Fantastic, right? Ben had this ability to look at you and say, you have mother issues. Like I was taking the class with a friend, and he goes, I can tell you have mother issues tap into that. And I text my friend the next day, and I said, I just out of curiosity, I gotta know, do you have mother issues? And he's like, I do. And I was like, how does Ben know? And so I found, as a director, I found it difficult to replicate that because I couldn't stare into someone and be like, you have body issues. I want you to think about your body issues when you do this. So for me, I have found another coach. His name's Brandon Olive. He's a good friend of mine. He was also in the movie in the DR Congo, and he's very much like creating the moment, like creating the situation. You create the character.
Right.
So you're not tapping in like, oh, you're like, it was funny because I'm LDS, and he was playing an LDS missionary. He's not LDS, and I was the guy who was trying to get this guy to drink. Like, that was my whole thing, was I was trying to corrupt this missionary. So he's never had the experience of being an LDS missionary, so he created it, right? He did research, he created it, and found the emotions there. My question is, like, what do you think of the benefits of
drawbacks?
Yeah, like, it sounds like you work off of a method of drawing from your personal experiences.
I work from whatever works.
Okay.
So that's called the checkoff method.
The creating.
Where and the way I remember it is you check your ego at the door. You put, whatever you are is gone. Now you have to create somebody else entirely. And sometimes you have no choice. Like I said, like you can as if whatever you want, but you might as well just create from the beginning. And there's also I hope I'm saying this right. There's practical aesthetic. Like, hopefully you guys, I'm like drawing from like classes like not last year. So like I'm like, right? Are these all the ones where you if you look sad, the audience will believe that you're sad and they'll feel sad. And you don't have to feel sad. That's not your job. You have to look sad so that they feel sad. So I will honestly use any method that works. Sometimes there's no tapping into that, in which case I just do my best with practical aesthetics. Sometimes I have no connection to a character, and there's very little as if, what if kind of things I can pull from in memories and emotions. The truth is I think no matter what, you'll always be using some level of method acting, because they will say, you open the box and it reeks. You're pulling, that's method acting right there, right? Even if you're just showing that it reeks and you can't actually but you're pulling from those memories, there's practical aesthetics going on, what your face is supposed to look like when that smelly box is open. It's kind of a big, I don't know what other actors do, because there's people who dive in all the way, it's really interesting to see people who are so committed to one track of acting. I don't know how they do it, but I'm not, I do method acting as well. Anybody? Did I answer your question even close?
Yeah, you did. And so as a director, I find the creating method much easier, because that way I don't have to sit there and go, are both your parents alive still? So you've lost a parent. Okay. Right. So let's talk about that. And in this way I'm like, your character doesn't have a parent.
As a director, I've done that though. I've been like, have you ever broken up with somebody?
Yeah, and I've done that too. It's like, but I've never dug into their lives.
Right.
And so I find that much easier as a director, but I've often wondered as an actor how because that's just me being like, oh, that's shorthand, right? I can go in and say, let's create together. This is how you're feeling. This is how your character's feeling. And even and we talked about it last night. I'm saying that because there's some of you here. Where I would just be like, this line, you talk about your mother, as character, think of your mother, create your mother. I'm not going to create her.
Right.
You create her. And then there's something true behind that, because
that's what I was going to say. That's your, as an actor, all you have to do as a director is point us, and then the rest is our job to pull what techniques and stuff need to happen in order to give you the results that you need. So I think you're right.
Yeah.
So I come from the world of live sketch comedy, where
I do too.
in an hour and a half I've performed as I think 16 different characters in an hour and a half show once, right? And so I think for me, the method of acting you choose or how deep you're going to go into the spectrum of method acting, you have to learn to be, as an actor, you have to learn to be very agile. Because the projects that you're involved with will largely dictate the stuff that you could do, right? Like one of the famous acting or method acting, I think, tropes of American cinema, right, is Robert De Niro in Raging Bull. If you haven't seen the movie, he appears as both a very fit boxer and then a very overweight, washed up kind of athlete, right? And to prepare for the role, he gorged at fancy restaurants and put on a ton of weight, right? And he was like, I never understood the difficulties that people go through when they're overweight like this, and I do understand that now. You just can't do that in a sketch comedy show, right? Like, I cannot eat enough in between takes. And so you have to kind of step back and look at what the cost is going to be to you, I think, but also even what's actually possible and helpful when you get down to a gig, right? So like the DC Congo experience, like you didn't even know you were going to be the B character. And so good luck trying to get really, really, really into that. And so you have to do, I think, some more of these like reflexive type of methods where you say, well, I can relate to this type of stimulus. I can relate to this type of environment. And I'm going to have to draw on that. And then if you are going to get stuck into the rut of maybe some of the more, I don't want to say shallow methods, but like the practical aesthetic, I think a lot of people maybe might turn up their nose at, or it's like considered a last resort because it's like, well, it's not the best. If you are going to do that, you have to make sure that you don't let that opinion of the method of acting come across to your audience. I've sat in a lot of performances and I've worked with a lot of performers who have had to resort to that type of thing, or for some reason just kind of default to that by choice or whatever, but it comes across like,
I'm faking it.
Yeah, it's right, and like, look how sad I am, and look how funny this is, or look how and it's just, we have to at the very end of the day, right? The job of the actor is to make you believe the story. Yeah. And if you can't do that, then you're not. Yeah. Then you're a wannabe like me, right?
and the camera's only gonna see your face, right? Like, but your face is so nuanced that if there's not something deeper, if there's not an inner life that you've created for the character, I feel like it will be wooden. But in the end, like in filmmaking, we often talk about like everything is for the camera. If it's not for the camera, it's not in the movie. It's a waste, right? Like you want everything on there and you want the face, So yeah, it's like a blank face can be amazing too.
It is.
and is in a lot of movies nowadays where it's just like,
yeah.
Oh my gosh, my child's been kidnapped.
But I'm kind of sad.
Like,
when I look at you and you say that, I'm kind of sad.
And you're kind of sad, but I'm thinking about McDonald's right now.
Right.
And how much I would love.
And the camera can't tell.
Yeah, and they can't tell.
Yeah. No, it's true. In fact, I started my training as a theater actor and moved over into film, and I was pretty surprised how they're just like, stop emoting. Like, we don't care what you're thinking. Could you just look in this direction for a minute? And I'm just like, all this training to look in that direction. What a waste. See, I am the method actor. Like, look at me. We hit on De Niro. Do you guys have any other stories of method acting tragedy? Did you look at into any of those? Sure.
Well, I think the most famous one of our time, right, is the conspiracy and the theories around Heath Ledger and the Joker, right, which some people say led to his demise. And I think his father is on record for saying that's a ridiculous theory, and like my son wouldn't allow that to go. Like, it's one thing if we say my son died from an addiction or something like that. It's another thing to say he kind of purposefully led himself down the road. I mean, there are a lot of creepy things in Heath Ledger's preparation for the Joker, right? Including notebooks full of madmen's ramblings till early in the morning and stuff like that. I think the other big ones that come to mind for me, and I don't know why there's like a fascination with weight and method acting and the media.
Yeah.
But you hear about that so much, especially with male actors, right? Like De Niro, Christian Bale.
Christian Bale was I was
and the
thinking
Machinist
of.
Who lost.
Adrian Brody.
Adrian Brody, who also like secluded himself.
Right.
I mean, so there's like a lot of kind of. it's an interesting history, I think. Kohl.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to think of. I like Jared Leto also with the Joker. I know he did a lot of stuff that, like was pretty inappropriate. And the Joker is a fictional character who is a criminal. And so I often wonder like how much you want to emulate that in your daily life. If you're creeping out your, so like there's also a thing that is kind of method directing, where like a director or someone will tell the crew to treat an actor a certain way. Right. Like a Shelley Duvall in The Shining and stuff like that, where it's like I find that like really toxic, and also like very distrusting of your actors. You're like, hey, everybody don't talk to, ignore this person because they're playing an imaginary character, so act like you can't see them. And it's like, right. It's the actor's job to get there. It's not the crew's job to like torture the actors to get there.
Force them into it.
So that's just my opinion. And I'm not saying I'm right, but I feel like on set there needs to be a really safe and like just a very safe and friendly environment, and you'll get the best work out of everyone that way. And if you're like, well, these two people are playing enemies, so I'm gonna like start spreading rumors and they're gonna be at odds emotionally, like that's just, and that kind of stuff has happened, right? Especially with directors who are very famous and know that they can get away with that kind of stuff. But if like I think about like if an indie guy did that,
yeah,
they'd be like, everyone would be like, don't work with that guy. He's toxic, So I think there's got to be some common human decency above all else.
Yeah, I think like an example that comes to mind what you're talking about, I think it was Saving Private Ryan, in which I'm blanking on who Ryan was.
Oh, Matt Damon.
Matt Damon, that's right. Where like they would do all these platoon exercises to prepare and like just single out Matt. And just be like he's not involved, just to give him that outsider type of thing. And it is mind games at the end of the day, right? You're playing psychology. I also just kind of want to jump on that. For me, I'm a very practical human being. And for me, everything comes down to almost like an hourly cost-benefit analysis, right? Like Forrest Whitaker in Last King of Scotland, he learned Swahili for his role. Yeah. And it's like, well, I mean, cool. What a great life skill to have, but like, I don't know if that is really going to come through in the performance. Yeah, like learning a language fluently is a really significant undertaking.
Swahili doesn't sound easy.
No, and so I mean, there's things like that. Now that being said, we as for some reason as a culture, as an acting community, the Academy in particular, they just love these deep method performances. Daniel Day-Lewis, right, I think is kind of like the king of method acting right now. And in his most recent film, when he was playing Abraham Lincoln, one of his co-workers was interviewed and they said, hey, what's it like working with Daniel Day-Lewis? And they said, I don't know, I've never met the man. So it's, for me, again, I come back to just like, well, okay, what's the project, and can I get there with I think there's a lot of British actors that really harp on this American tradition. They think it is the most ridiculous thing they've ever heard of, and they say, it's called acting for a reason. And they have a great point, actually, because there's a lot of amazing British actors, and they are not subscribing to the theory. So, it's not the only way to get there. I also appreciate your comments, Shelly, that spectrum, there's a spectrum, just like everything, right? There's a spectrum, and you'll find somewhere on that spectrum for a project to be able to fit and to get your best performance, I think.
Yeah. As you were talking about directors doing it, they sent the cast of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest to a psychiatric ward. Yeah. And how long were they there? Do you guys know?
Oh.
Yeah. They sent them there, and they just made them stay there to get in character.
Yeah, And I think like doing a military movie and sending your guys to boot camp, that's great. If the actors are willing to go to a mental institution, great. Right. It's more the mind games of like, right before I shot a movie. I directed a movie called "You May Now Kill the Bride" for Lifetime, and it was a thriller. And so I was looking at thrillers, but somehow I ended
Not for
up.
Hallmark? Are you sure?
You May Now Kill the Bride.
You may now.
Thrillers are for Lifetime, and romantic movies are for Hallmark.
Oh, okay.
And holiday movies are, I think, both.
Yeah.
Anyway, I was watching Darren Aronofsky's The Wrestler, which I just adore that movie. And I was, if you watch You May Now Kill the Bride, in The Wrestler, they do a lot of these following behind the head shots that I was totally ripping off. Anyway, in the special features, there's a part where Mickey Rourke he's about to start the scene, and Darren Aronofsky walks into camera, grabs him by the lapel, shakes him, slaps him in the face, says something to him, and walks away. And when he slapped him, he kind of got Mickey in the eye. So he's kind of like this, as they're like, "Okay, everyone, find your places." And he's like, his eyes are watering, and it was a very dramatic scene. And I was like,
Nope.
At what point do I feel like it would be appropriate to slap
Entitled.
an actor?
Yeah.
And to slap, and I've talked to some people who are like, well, there's some, Mickey Rourke was kind of doing some stuff and whatever, and I was still like, I still don't know if I'd slap someone. And I don't know if I would ever sit here and go, you know what this next take needs? It needs me to slap the actor. So.
That was more Rourke, though. That was Rourke.
I've heard this story.
Letting Darren Aronofsky do that to incite him.
Right. I've
So it was
heard stuff
him
like this.
Asking him, saying like, if me as
Send
an
me to
actor
the
talking
psychiatric
you as a
ward.
director,
Yeah.
Slap
it would
me.
be like, all right, for this scene, in order for me to get there, like, I don't care if you take the grip, you take whoever's, have someone come in and just punch the crap out, so I can get into the moment.
And if that's gonna
Rourke
work.
is notorious for like taking method to that level.
Right. That's good, but I'm still like, like if somebody was like, I need you to slap me before this next one, I'm like, that you're talking to the wrong guy. Like, I'm not a violent person at all. I put my violence in my movies. So yeah, I think that there's a thing about that, right? Like I don't know where I'm going other than
Don't slap me.
I talked with my actors.
There's a level
I was
of
like, do I need to give you the Aronofsky slap? Like that's what I'd say to them between takes. I was like, do I need to give you the slap? Because
It's 2019. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
you can't trust actors.
You can't.
Punch me. Okay. Lawsuit. And your movie's shut
It's on
down.
Twitter.
Like, honestly, it's just not I don't know. There are a lot of liabilities that come with being a deep method actor, and you should be, if you're going to subscribe to that method, you should be aware that a stigma will follow you as an actor, and some people may not want to work with you because of those. Like, the fact that Christian Bale lost so much weight and was so severely underweight for a role, if it is, I think Cole's right. If this is an indie film, like, that's not
Safe.
you're not getting an Oscar, you're getting your studio's shut down. You know what I mean? And you're getting an insane amount of social media backlash, the type of backlash that you're not going to be equipped to respond to, So, like, again, it's very I guess I'm the practical perspective kind of like voice here today, but like you have to just pay very close attention to the consequences of the choices that you're making as an actor and as a performer, right? The deeper you go, the harder it is to fit. Just think about that guy looking in the mirror and throwing the peanuts, right? Like, you can take that story with you today. Now, that being said, when I was a younger actor, I loved to experiment with it. And honestly, it's fun to be a method actor. It really is. I don't know what it is, but there's like a high you get. I tried this for a very improbable role as the stage manager in Our Town one time. Now, how you get into that role, I still am trying to like backtrack and be like, I am a narrator of like extra reality events, and I would like narrate my mom or something at home, just like, Mom, it's crazy how she always makes this toast for her children. It's just like, how do you get into a role like that? I don't know. But it's fun to try, and it's fun to do that. And if you can create environments for yours, and I do think it's a positive exercise, right? As a writer, we go through a lot of exercises that don't end up making a final draft.
Right.
And I think it's the same thing for an actor, right? Like, go through it, see what you can take from it, what you can learn from it, but don't just be aware that whatever you decide to bring to set or to the backstage, like other people are going to notice, and then they will talk about it. I am here today talking about this guy still looking in the mirror as Jean Valjean. Yeah, I'm not going to say his name because I understand this is being broadcast to YouTube. Anybody, it's not like I was in like 50 productions of Les Mis, so I guess he knows who he is. Sorry, Cliff, but anyway.
So, like I said, I started in theater and then moved into film. So when I do film acting, I usually do have to look in a mirror because I over-emote. And so I have to like say my lines into a mirror. I feel so stupid every time. Like, I haven't gotten comfortable with this practice yet. I can do it for myself, but when I'm having to do it like you're handed sides, you know, and like in a ballet room, and you're just like, I'm gonna be over here in the corner looking at myself while I do my sides. There's plenty of people out there telling stories about me sitting in a corner. One time, actually, I was sitting in the corner and I was saying my sides into a mirror, and a guy came up to me and he goes, "So you like to look at yourself?" He was this really good looking guy too, and I was like, I'm just working through my lines, you know? And he was like, "I like to look at myself too." And I was like, what? And what's the Greek guy who looks at himself?
Narcissist.
Yeah, he goes, "Do you know what narcissism is?" And I was like, "No." And he goes, "I have it. I think you have it too." And I was like, I am just reading my lines into a mirror so I don't look like an idiot. So yeah, it was a lovely.
Here's a card. Here's our group that we meet every other week. Right?
He was trying to help me, I think.
Narcissist
It was very
Anonymous.
sweet of him, but I was like, yeah, no, I don't love this part. It's very uncomfortable for me.
That actually reminds me of a story is anybody like fascinated with Jimmy Dean by chance? James Dean?
Oh, for a minute I'm like, the sausage? Yeah.
Well, yeah, as well. So James Dean has this really great story from his life in which he was trying to break into acting, and it reminds me of this because I've always wondered about the other person in this experience. But method acting is a really fun thing to do at an audition, right? Because it really makes a splash, and you're sure to be remembered. So he was auditioning for some role in which he was like an army guy who was going off to war, and it was the audition scene was the last scene with his sweetheart before going. And so he gets there, and they say, "Okay, here's your script. Here are the sides." And he says, "I don't need a script." and instantly, and then they had like a girl there that was reading the other part. And I've always wondered how this girl must have felt in this situation, right? Where she's just like, "Oh, okay, another guy. I don't need a script." Oh, and so he goes through, and by the end of this scene, right, like what he would do is basically he would come and he would be very affectionate with this girl, and then like open one eye to kind of see on her script, like, okay, here are the lines coming up, and I'll do something kind of like that. But like, he had no reservations about being very in character with this woman he was auditioning with, who he'd never met, and so he had kissed her a lot in this, and very physical, and so I just wonder always what it must have been like for her, who had gone through a lot of auditions, and I guarantee you none of them had done something similar, right? James Dean ended up getting the role, but just kind of like, wow, this guy's really serious actor, kind of just like, he's really getting into it. But yeah, I've just kind of always wondered, and again, it gets back to, are you a narcissist, right? It's like the assumptions other people are going to make are always so interesting.
Well, I think that's the fear. It's pretty easy sometimes to tell an actor who's more seasoned than another by their comfort with the other actors on set. It's pretty apparent sometimes, pretty quick and pretty clear if they are capable of making relationships look real really quickly, or if they're like, I don't really know this person. You're just like, oh, come on, you can do this. We have not a ton of time left. Do you guys have questions out there? Yes.
I'm curious about, with this transition from theater to acting on a film, with, say, for instance, Meisner, and using kind of that idea of really listening and really being able to respond instinctively to that other person and what they're saying beforehand.
Like what we were just saying.
And when you're cutting in, cut, and then, okay, now say your line, and you're right. Is that effective? I mean, do directors come up and say, okay, now let's really, I'm going to give you that line. I want you to really be listening. I want you to really be responding. I mean, do you...
It's really hard because sometimes the grip's reading your lines on the other side with, a camera in your face and there's nobody to connect to, and then your ability to make that emotional connection becomes a lot of times aesthetic, practical aesthetics, because that's not an option. Or some people, I guess, are really good at, method, like where they've already kind of worked it, they already kind of know, and so they're pulling and recalling. You bring up a really good point. That does get really, really complicated. Yes?
One with Meisner,
Please.
it's you do repetition so that you're playing through 1,000 different ways to react and respond to
Right.
it. So no matter how many times I have to do the take, the director will get what they want, the editor will find what they want. That kind of aspect is going to happen. So even if you're not going to perfectly duplicate
Right,
the
and you don't want to.
emotional,
Yeah.
reaction every time. The physical, absolutely.
You have to have your hand here.
You have to do all of that. Yeah, that's why Keanu Reeves still works, because he's a robot.
And it works, right? And they're like, we'll take him. We'll take who's the guy from the oh my gosh, my brain is awesome. The one where he was stealing the National Treasure.
Nicolas Cage.
Nicolas Cage, right? He still works for that same reason. It works, He hits his marks. He's amusing. So
I think what I'm
we'll keep
gathering,
him.
though, from what you guys are saying is it's a toolbox.
It's
And
a toolbox.
And all the tools that we learn from the different methods, different techniques, we're putting into this box. And just because a screwdriver works today doesn't going to mean it's going to work tomorrow.
No.
And we need to make sure we have the right tool to accomplish what we need to do for the director, for the audience, for whatever it is that we're in the performance too. Because I think space and that you're playing in has a lot to do with it too.
Right.
If you're on a film,
A
you've got
small
more time.
theater, a big theater, a film.
Yeah, you doing black box, or are you
Right.
playing to nosebleed seats,
Right.
where you have to be
Yep.
very.
Are you doing sketch comedy?
Mhm.
Because that's still acting.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the intimacy of your audience will also change your performance as well.
Right. We've actually talked about how we're all method actors right now. Like, we don't really know what we're talking about. We're just invoking, like if we were to be on this panel, what would we actually say?
I am a panelist.
My dog is dead. Yes, and there's so many methods. So I think it's kind of funny when people say, "Oh, it's method acting," and I'm like, "Wow, that's a spectrum of things you just lumped into one fat sum." But you think of stories. I was actually thinking of the story. Adrian Brody, when we were talking, I was like, oh yeah, Adrian Brody, he lost a ton of weight for piano. Is that?
The pianist.
The pianist, thank you. Because I was like, it's not quite there, like my ability to say Nicolas Cage.
Yeah,
He lost a ton of weight. He sold like his house, his car. He moved to Europe with a backpack. He like lost his girlfriend. He like wanted to know what it felt like to be broken. And so he's crazy.
He's crazy.
I was just recently working on a sketch with a group of actors, and it was a sketch in which they were parodying basically the Olympic broadcast team. And so I think that you got it exactly right. I think if you could take one theme from this today, it's that I think we've said acting, you have to have a big toolbox.
Right.
That being said, and it's kind of this story, you kind of brought it to mind, right? If you're going to play a refugee from the Holocaust, you have to understand certain things, right? And so I went and saw, as they were running through this sketch that they were doing, and it was a similar experience where afterward I was giving them notes and I just said, which one of you has actually watched an Olympic broadcast to prepare for the role? And none of them raised their hands. And I said, go away.
Right.
Get off and go do it, because there's just some things you just have to do a little bit of research, and I don't even think that's method acting. I think that's just not wasting other people's time. You have to know what you're talking about.
Right.
Do you have anything to add?
Yeah.
No.
Okay. I do sketch as well, and yeah, you do. You have to. You're like doing a voice, and you're like, I'm not going to be able to pull that off until I've heard it a million times. Like an actor, you're portraying another actor, or a person from the wrestling person, and you're just like, I don't know how to do that. This is going to take some prep work. So it's always going to take some prep work. Adrian Brody, though, in his defense, won an Oscar for that role. So like Kohl was saying, there is something to be said. The Oscars love it, and the truth is that we kind of love it too. I mean, who didn't love Heath Ledger's role as the Joker? Like he really was there, you know. So as we're discounting it, we
What's
do.
Adrian doing now, though?
One time he didn't like the color red. I don't know. That's the last thing I can think of him doing. He's skilled. He's got the talent to do it.
He did the Brothers. The Brothers Bloom. Has anyone seen that movie?
Yeah, I've seen it.
It's like a very melancholy, kind of weird film. But it's like a group. It's these two brothers, and they're kind of con guys, and
Rain Johnson's director.
And it's Mark Ruffalo and Adrian Brody are the two. Anyway, it's an interesting movie. I'm not going to spoil the end for you, but the end may make you, like me, go, huh, what an interesting choice that person made. But anyway, yeah.
And what year do you think that was?
That was,
It was a while ago.
I would say,
So maybe nothing.
around 2000, maybe?
Yeah. It was his second film. It was after Brick.
Oh, okay.
Some of them are praised, and then some of them are outcast.
I think that's a really great point. You get really deep like that. You do these really hard, difficult roles, and you don't necessarily stick around as long as people who can just deliver. And honestly, I don't know how some of those other actors do it, but there's definitely some in there, like we were talking about, who are probably practical aesthetics. They're like, look sad, look happy. You found them, hooray! You know, like
Go home to my mansion, enjoy a beautiful dinner. Yeah.
So I mean, like they just kind of do it. They're just acting. I want to know how the British, these amazing British actors do it. I want
But
to
there's
get.
terrible British actors too.
There
You
are.
just don't get to see them most of the time.
They don't get across the pond.
They don't make it.
Right.
There's a lot of bad ones. Just watch BBC. That's most of them are there.
Oh, there's some great acting on BBC too, but
Some
it's
pretty
true.
bad stuff.
It's true. There's some bad stuff in there. Any other questions? Because it's over. Can
It's
you hear?
over. If you have a question, you can't ask it. So.
Wonderful. Thank you guys so much. Did you guys have anything last moment? Okay. Thank
Is
you
that all I
guys
need
so
to
much.
say?
I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Thanks.